The divorce papers struck Naomi Okafor in the face and fluttered down onto her lap like dead leaves. 300 guests gasped. Kang Do-hyun stood over her at the front table of the Seoul Grand Hall, his jaw tight with rage, his mistress smirking behind him. "Sign them," he snarled into the microphone. "You're nothing without me. You were nothing before me, and you'll be nothing after me." The cameras flashed. The crowd waited for her to break. Naomi picked up the papers slowly. She smiled, and somewhere deep in Do-hyun's chest, a strange cold fear awakened, the first warning that he had just made the worst mistake of his life. Welcome to Afrohan Tales, besties. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories like this. The silence that followed Do-hyun's words was so heavy it felt like the air itself had stopped moving. Politicians, business titans, mafia captains in tailored suits with weapons hidden beneath their jackets, television hosts, foreign dignitaries. Every single one of them stared at the woman seated alone at the front table, waiting for her to break. Naomi Okafor did not break. She gathered the scattered pages on her lap with the same calm she might have used to fold a silk scarf. She straightened the corners. She set them neatly on the white tablecloth in front of her. Then she lifted her wine glass and took a slow, deliberate sip. The lipstick mark she left on the rim was the only sign that her hands had moved at all. He thought he had won. For 10 years, he continued into the microphone, I have endured a marriage that gave me nothing but silence, a wife who could not give me children, a wife who could not understand my world, a wife who walked through my empire like a guest in her own home. He turned toward Han Soo-jin and lifted her hand to his lips. Tonight, I correct that mistake. The crowd gasped again. A senator's wife covered her mouth. Captain Min-jun, seated 3 tables away, did not move a single muscle, but his eyes locked onto Do-hyun's face and stayed there. The cameras kept rolling. Somewhere in the back, a young waiter dropped a tray and the crash made half the room flinch. Naomi did not flinch. Naomi, Do-hyun said, looking directly at her now, I am divorcing you, tonight, in front of everyone who matters. The papers are at your feet. Attorney Park has the rest. He paused for effect. You were nothing before me. You'll be nothing after me. Someone in the back of the room actually laughed. A few of the younger executives joined in, eager to please the boss. Soo-jin tilted her head and gave Naomi a slow, pitying look, the kind a cat gives a mouse before it pounces. The waiters froze with their trays still in their hands. Even the band stopped playing. Naomi reached down beside her chair and produced a small leather pen case from her purse. She unzipped it. She removed a black fountain pen. Naomi rose from her chair. She was wearing a simple black gown, no jewelry except diamond earrings, her hair pulled back in a low, elegant knot. She looked, in that moment, exactly like what Do-hyun believed her to be, a woman who had been given everything and was about to lose it all. She walked toward the stage with the unhurried grace of someone who had nowhere urgent to be. Attorney Park stepped forward nervously, holding a leather folder containing the official copies. Naomi accepted them, opened the folder, and read each page slowly. Do-hyun's smirk faltered for just a moment. He had expected tears. He had expected begging. The cameras zoomed in on her face, searching for any crack, any tremor, any sign that the humiliation had landed. She uncapped her fountain pen. She signed her name on every page with that same patient, unbothered calm. Then she handed the folder back. She turned to face Do-hyun. For the first time that night, she spoke. If that is what you want, she said, and her voice was soft, almost kind. The microphone caught every syllable. 300 people leaned forward. Naomi looked at Soo-jin, and her smile did not waver. Congratulations. She looked at Do-hyun, and the smile grew, just slightly. Enjoy your evening. Then she walked out of the Seoul Grand Hall, alone, while the entire room watched her go. The clicking of her heels on the marble floor was the only sound in the room. Step, step, step. The doors swung open. She did not look back. The laughter started before the doors had even closed behind her. It started small, A nervous chuckle from a board member trying to read the room, and then it grew. Sujin laughed loudest of all, tipping her head back so her diamond necklace flashed in the light. Do-hyun raised his glass and the crowd raised theirs with him. "To freedom," he announced. "To freedom," they echoed. Outside, Naomi walked across the red carpet without looking back. The paparazzi shouted her name. Cameras flashed in her face. Reporters thrust microphones at her, demanding a reaction, a tear, a single broken word. She gave them nothing. She slid into the back of a black Mercedes and the car pulled away into the Seoul night. The driver, a quiet man named Jun-ho who had worked for her for 7 years, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Madam," he said carefully, "are you all right?" Naomi pulled off her diamond earrings and placed them in the small velvet pouch in her purse. "I am perfectly fine, Juno." She looked out the window at the Seoul skyline, all those glittering buildings, half of which her ex-husband believed he owned. "Take me home." Juno hesitated. "To the penthouse, madam?" Naomi smiled, and this time it was a private smile, one no camera could capture. "No. To the estate in Gangnam. The one in my name only." Jun-ho's eyes widened slightly. He had not known about that estate. Very few people did. He nodded and pressed the accelerator. The story of how Naomi Okaforkang ended up sitting silently at her own humiliation began long before that night. It began 12 years ago, in a small office in Lagos, where a young Nigerian businesswoman in her late 20s was finalizing a real estate acquisition that would have made most veteran investors weep. She had been recruited by Chairman Kang himself, the legendary patriarch of the Kang dynasty, after he had watched her dismantle a hostile takeover attempt against her family's logistics company. He had flown to Nigeria personally. He had sat across from her in that small office and said, "I have been watching you for 2 years. Naomi had been 20 years then, sharp-eyed and unsmiling. "Why?" she had asked. The old man had smiled. "Because my son will need a wife who can outthink him, and I have not found one in Korea." She had laughed in his face. She had told him she was not for sale. Chairman Kang had laughed too. "I am not buying you. I am offering you an empire. The marriage is the cover. The work is the legacy." 3 months later, Naomi had flown to Seoul. 6 months later, she had met Do-hyun for the first time at a charity gala. He had looked at her like she was a vase he had been forced to display. He had not wanted the marriage. Chairman Kang had insisted. Do-hyun, 22 years old and already arrogant beyond reason, had agreed because his father's word was law and because the woman was, he had to admit, beautiful in a way that made him angry. He had married her in a quiet ceremony attended by only family. He had taken her home. He had told her on their wedding night that he would not be touching her. "This is business," he had said, loosening his tie in their bedroom. "Stay out of my way and we will get along fine." Naomi had simply nodded. She had moved her things into the guest suite herself. For 10 years, that was their marriage. Do-hyun ran his empire. He took mistresses, one after another, and made no effort to hide them. He insulted Naomi at dinner parties. He laughed when board members dismissed her ideas. He once told a Japanese investor that his wife was decoration, nothing more. Naomi heard every word. She filed every word away. And every single day, while Do-hyun believed she was lounging in spas or shopping in Cheongdam-dong, Naomi was working. Quietly, patiently, building. Chairman Kang had given her the keys. She had used them. By the time the old man died of a heart attack 5 years into the marriage, Naomi already owned 30% of every major company in the Kang portfolio. Do-hyun had never read his father's will carefully. He had assumed everything belonged to him. He had been wrong. Now, 12 years after that conversation in Lagos, the Mercedes pulled through a wrought iron gate in Gangnam and rolled up a long, tree-lined driveway. Naomi stepped out in front of a mansion Do-hyun had never seen, never visited, never known existed. Her butler, an elderly Korean man named Mr. Hwang, opened the door and bowed. "Welcome home, madam." Naomi smiled. "Thank you, Hwang. Has the team arrived?" "All 30 of them, madam." They are waiting in the war room. Naomi nodded once. She walked through the marble foyer and into a meeting room where 30 of the sharpest minds in Asia were waiting for her instructions. She let them stand for a moment. She walked to the head of the long mahogany table and looked at each face. Attorneys, bankers, forensic accountants, 2 former intelligence officers, a pair of media strategists. Gentlemen, ladies, it is done. A ripple of quiet satisfaction moved through the room. The lead attorney, a woman named Madame Yu, stepped forward. And the board meeting? Naomi sat down. She crossed her legs. 3 days from now, Attorney Park will deliver the documents personally. I want every piece of paper to be perfect, every signature verifiable, every percentage triple-checked. Madame Yu bowed her head. It will be done. Naomi looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then she smiled, just slightly. He thinks he won tonight. The room was silent. Let him think it for 3 more days. Meanwhile, back at the Seoul Grand Hall, Do-hyun was getting drunk on his own triumph. He pulled Soo-jin onto the dance floor and spun her in slow circles while the band played a romantic ballad. Did you see her face? He whispered into Soo-jin's ear. Did you see how she just sat there? Soo-jin laughed and pressed herself against him. She is broken, my love. Completely broken. Duyungrine. She will be back. Begging. Within a week. They always come back. Soo-jin tilted her head up and kissed him on the jaw. And when she does? Do-hyun's voice was cold. I will laugh. And then I will send her back to Lagos with nothing. Soo-jin smiled. But her eyes, for just a moment, were not smiling at all. She glanced at her phone, hidden in the small bag at her wrist. There was a message there. It is done. Phase 1 complete. Soo-jin's smile widened, and only she knew why. The next morning, the Seoul newspapers exploded. Every front page carried the same photograph. Do-hyun with his arm around Soo-jin. Naomi walking out alone. The headlines screamed about the divorce. Korean society pages mocked the African wife who had been discarded like yesterday's flowers. Television hosts debated whether Naomi would return to Nigeria in disgrace. Internet forums lit up with cruel jokes. Through all of it, Naomi sat in her private library with a cup of tea, watching the coverage on a muted television. Mr. Huang brought her breakfast. Madam, your phone has been ringing all morning. Reporters, former friends, a few cousins from Lagos. Naomi did not look away from the screen. Block them all, Huang, except for Captain Minjun. If he calls, put him through immediately. Mr. Huang bowed and left. Naomi sipped her tea. On the television, Soo-jin was being interviewed outside a luxury boutique. She was wearing sunglasses and laughing at the reporters. I have no comment about that woman, Soo-jin said sweetly. She had her chance. She wasted it. I will not waste mine. Naomi watched the performance with quiet interest. She picked up her phone and sent a single text message. Excellent work last night. Continue as planned. The reply came within seconds. Yes, madam. Naomi set the phone down. She picked up a leather-bound notebook from the table beside her and opened it to a page marked with a red ribbon. The page was titled Phase 2, The Reveal. She traced her finger down the list of names. For 3 days, Do-hyun celebrated. He hosted a party at his penthouse with 200 of his closest associates. He flew in champagne from France and caviar from Russia. He stood on the balcony overlooking the Han River and declared, again and again, that he was a free man. To my new beginning, he shouted, and the crowd cheered. Soo-jin, draped in white this time, took his arm and beamed at the photographers. We will be married before the end of the year, Do-hyun announced. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Soo-jin cried happy tears. A few of the younger captains glanced at Captain Minjun, who stood silently against the far wall with a glass of untouched water in his hand. Minjun did not smile. Minjun did not applaud. Minjun watched. Inside the kitchen, away from the cameras, Soo-jin slipped away to take a phone call. She locked herself in the pantry and pressed the phone to her ear. He just announced we are getting married. On the other end, Naomi's voice was soft as silk. Let him plan the wedding. Let him spend the money. It will make the ending sweeter. Sujin laughed quietly. Madam, you are a terrible woman. Naomi laughed too, but only briefly. Sujin, has he mentioned the offshore accounts? Twice last night. He thinks they are secure. They are not. By Friday, every single one will be frozen. Make sure he does not try to access them before then. Understood, madam. Sujin ended the call and walked back out to her future husband with a radiant smile. On the third day, just as Attorney Park had promised, the storm finally broke. Do-hyun was in his office at Kong Tower, the 70-story glass monument his father had built, signing papers for a new construction deal in Busan. His secretary buzzed in. Sir, Attorney Park is here. He says it is urgent. Do-hyun rolled his eyes. Tell him to come back tomorrow. Sir, he says it concerns the board. He is requesting an emergency meeting in 1 hour. Do-hyun frowned. He did not like being interrupted. Fine. Gather them. The boardroom on the 50th floor. Within the hour, 12 of the most powerful executives in the Kong Empire were seated around a glass conference table. Attorney Park entered with 3 assistants, each carrying a large file box. He looked pale. He looked nervous. He looked like a man about to drop a bomb in a very small room. Gentlemen, Attorney Park began, his voice trembling slightly. I have called this meeting because I have an obligation, both legal and personal, to disclose information that has come to light following the dissolution of Chairman Kong Do-hyun's marriage. Do-hyun leaned back in his chair and laughed. Park, if this is about the alimony, just write the woman a check and let us move on. Attorney Park did not laugh. He opened the first file box and began removing documents. Stacks of them, bound with red string, sealed with notary stamps. Sir, he said carefully, this is not about alimony. He placed the first document in front of Do-hyun. This is about ownership. Do-hyun glanced at the document. Then he looked at it more carefully. His eyes scanned the title page. Kong Construction Holdings. Shareholder Registry. Naomi Okafor Kong. 70% controlling interest. Do-hyun blinked. He read it again. He looked up at Attorney Park. This is a joke. It is not a joke, sir. Attorney Park placed another document beside the first. Kong Shipping International. Shareholder Registry. Naomi Okafor Kong. 70% controlling interest. Then another. Kong Real Estate Group. Another. Kong Pharmaceutical. Another. Kong Media Conglomerate. 12 documents in total. 12 companies. Every single one of them showed the same name. Every single one of them showed the same percentage. The boardroom was silent. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind of silence that hurts. Do-hyun stood up so fast his chair slammed against the wall behind him. This is fraud, he shouted. This is forgery. Park, have you lost your mind? Attorney Park did not flinch. He had been preparing for this moment for over a year. Sir, every document is authenticated. Every signature is verified. Every ownership transfer was personally approved by your late father, Chairman Kong Sr., beginning 12 years ago. The transfers were completed legally, gradually, and with full board notification at the time of each transaction. Do-hyun's face went from red to white. My father. Yes, sir. My father gave my empire to that woman? Attorney Park took a slow breath. Sir, with respect, it was never your empire. It was your father's empire. And he gave the majority of it to the only person he believed could protect it. The board members stared at their hands. None of them would meet Do-hyun's eyes. The chief financial officer, a man named Lee Jae-won, cleared his throat carefully. Chairman Kong, I think we should adjourn this meeting until we have consulted our individual attorneys. Do-hyun whipped around to face him. Sit down, Lee. We are not adjourning anything. But Lee Jae-won did not sit down. He gathered his papers. He stood. He walked out of the room. One by one, the others followed him. Within 4 minutes, Do-hyun was alone in the boardroom with Attorney Park and 3 assistants and 12 documents that had just dismantled his entire identity. He sank slowly back into his chair. He stared at the papers. "Where is she?" he whispered. By the time Do-hyun made it home that evening, his phone had rung 243 times. Banks, investors, foreign partners, 3 different ambassadors, 2 journalists who had somehow already gotten the story. He ignored every call. He stormed into his penthouse and threw his briefcase across the marble floor. Soo-jin was waiting for him in the living room, sipping wine. "My love, what is wrong?" she asked, her voice full of perfect, fake concern. Do-hyun grabbed a crystal decanter and hurled it against the wall. It exploded into 1,000 glittering pieces. "She owns it," he roared. "She owns all of it. She has owned it for years." Soo-jin set down her wine glass. "Who, my love?" "Naomi. That witch. That snake. She has been laughing at me for a decade." Soo-jin rose gracefully from the couch and walked to him. She placed her hands on his chest. She looked up at him with wide, sympathetic eyes. "My love, calm down. There must be a way to fix this. Lawyers, lawsuits. We can find a way." Do-hyun grabbed her wrists. "I need every favor I have ever been owed. Every one. Tonight." Soo-jin nodded sweetly. "Of course, my love. Tell me what you need." But the moment he turned away to pour himself a drink, Soo-jin pulled out her phone and sent another text. "He is panicking. He will try to call the syndicate captains tonight. Phase 3 is ready when you are." Naomi's reply came within 30 seconds. "Activate it. Tonight." Soo-jin smiled and slipped the phone back into her pocket. That same evening, in a private dining room at one of Seoul's most exclusive restaurants, Naomi was hosting a quiet dinner for 3 guests. They were not lawyers. They were not businessmen. They were 3 of the most senior captains in the Kong Syndicate, men who had served Chairman Kong for over 30 years each. They sat around a low table set with traditional Korean dishes, and they listened with grave attention as Naomi spoke. "I am not asking for your loyalty," she said, her voice soft. "I am not even asking for your alliance. I am only asking for one thing. A meeting. 3 days from now. Every captain in the syndicate. All 37 of them. I will speak. They will listen. After that, they may choose whatever path they wish." The oldest of the 3 captains, a man with a silver beard and a long scar across his cheek, nodded slowly. "Madam Naomi, we have watched you for 12 years. We have seen what you do. We have seen who you help. We know whose hospital bills you paid when my brother was sick. We know whose children's school fees you covered when Captain Yoon was killed in the Busan incident." Naomi's expression did not change. "Those things were private." "Nothing is private among brothers, madam." The old captain smiled faintly. "The meeting will happen. I give you my word." Naomi bowed her head in thanks. The other 2 captains bowed deeper. They knew, all 3 of them, that the empire was about to change hands. They had known it for a long time. By the next morning, the news had reached the international markets. Stock prices for every Kong-linked company began to wobble. Foreign investors began making frantic calls. The Korean financial press, which had been mocking Naomi just 3 days earlier, was now scrambling to write profiles of the mysterious Nigerian heiress. Television networks dug up old footage of her. Footage in which she could be seen standing quietly beside Do-hyun at events, looking, in retrospect, like a woman who knew far more than she was letting on. By noon, 3 different European newspapers had published articles asking the same question. Who is Naomi Okafor Kong? And how did she become the most powerful woman in Asia overnight? The answer, of course, was that she had not become anything overnight. She had been the most powerful woman in Asia for years. Everyone had simply failed to look. If you are enjoying this story so far, please drop a like and tell me in the comments what you would have done in Naomi's place. Would you have stayed quiet for 10 years? Would you have struck back immediately? Let me know below, and do not forget to subscribe to Afrohan Tales for more powerful stories like this one. Now back to our story. Do-hyun did not sleep that night. He paced his penthouse like a caged animal. He called every contact in his phone. He called bankers. He called politicians. He called old family friends. He called captains. Most of them did not answer. The few who did spoke to him with a strange new caution, a politeness that felt more like distance than respect. He noticed it. He noticed all of it. By 3 in the morning, he was sitting on his balcony with a half-empty bottle of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the Seoul skyline. Somewhere out there, in one of those buildings, was the woman he had spent 10 years dismissing. The woman who had just taken everything from him without raising her voice. The next morning, he made a decision. He would go to her. He would confront her. He would intimidate her into returning what she had stolen. Because surely, he told himself, it had to be theft. Surely his father, the legendary Chairman Kong, would never have willingly handed his life's work to a foreign woman. There had to be a mistake. There had to be a loophole. There had to be a way back. He had his driver take him to her office, the one in the new building she had apparently registered in her own name 3 years ago, in the heart of the Gangnam business district. He had never known about this office. He had walked past the building dozens of times without ever realizing his wife owned it. He stormed past the receptionist. He pushed past 2 security guards. He took the private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a vast, sunlit office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Naomi was standing at her desk, reviewing documents with 2 assistants. She looked up when he entered. She did not look surprised. She had been expecting him. Do-young. She set down the papers calmly. "Leave us, please," she said to the assistants. They bowed and exited. The doors closed. Husband and ex-wife stood facing each other for the first time since the gala. "Tell me this is a mistake," Do-hyun said. His voice was hoarse. "Tell me you forged those documents. Tell me my father did not do this to me." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Sit down, Do-hyun." "I will not sit down," he shouted. "I want answers." Naomi walked around her desk and sat on the edge of it, her hands folded in her lap. "You want answers? Very well. Ask your questions." Do-hyun stared at her. "How long?" 12 years. Since before our marriage. Your father came to Lagos to find me. He wanted a successor. He chose me." Do-hyun staggered backward as if she had struck him. "My father chose you over me?" "Yes." "Why?" Naomi looked at him with something that was almost, but not quite, pity. "Because you only knew how to take. He needed someone who knew how to build." Do-hyun's hands trembled. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. "You will give it back," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Every share, every percentage, every signature. You will sign it back to me, or I will destroy you." Naomi smiled. It was a small smile, almost gentle. "Do-young." She stood up from the desk. She walked toward him slowly. She stopped just close enough that he could smell her perfume, the same perfume she had worn for 10 years. "You spent a decade telling me I was nothing. You humiliated me in front of every important person in this country. You announced my discarding like a king dismissing a servant girl." Her voice did not rise. It only grew softer, more precise. "And now you stand in my office, and you make demands." Do-hyun's jaw clenched. "Naomi, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. I am your husband. You are my former husband. You insisted on the divorce. I signed the papers in front of 300 witnesses. I will reverse the divorce." Naomi laughed. It was a real laugh, the first genuine sound of amusement she had made in front of him in years. "Do-young, you cannot reverse a divorce I do not wish to reverse." She turned and walked back to her desk. She picked up her papers. "You may leave now. Mr. Huang will see you out." Do-hyun did not move. "I will fight you. Every court, every captain, every bank." Naomi did not look up. "You may try." He left her office in a rage so blinding he could barely see the elevator buttons. He spent the next 2 days launching every counterattack he could think of. He hired 3 different law firms. He filed an emergency injunction. He attempted to freeze her personal accounts. He sent 2 of his most loyal captains to threaten Attorney Park into recanting his testimony. Every move failed. The injunction was denied within 4 hours by a judge who had, apparently, dined with Naomi the previous month. The accounts could not be frozen because they were held in jurisdictions Do-hyun had never even heard of. Attorney Park refused to recant and, in fact, produced additional documents proving that Chairman Kong had personally written and signed every transfer in his own hand. And then came the moment that truly broke Do-hyun. He summoned Captain Min-jun to his penthouse. Min-jun was the most respected captain in the entire Kong syndicate. He had served Chairman Kong for 28 years. He had personally trained half the other captains. If Min-jun stood with Do-hyun, the rest would follow. Min-jun arrived precisely on time. He bowed once at the door. He did not smile. He did not speak. He simply waited. Do-hyun gestured to the leather chair across from him. Min-jun, old friend, we have a situation.
Min-jun did not sit.
I prefer to stand, Chairman. Do-hyun frowned slightly at the formality but pressed on. You have heard about the ownership dispute with Naomi. I have heard, Chairman. I need the captains united behind me. I need a public show of force. I need every captain in the syndicate to publicly affirm their loyalty to the Kong name. To me, by the end of this week. Min-jun was silent for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, Chairman, may I speak freely? Of course. When your father lay dying, he called me to his bedside. Do you know what he told me? Do-hyun shook his head slowly. He told me that he had built an empire with 2 hands, and that he had decided to leave it in the care of 2 people. One who would guard it.
Min-jun paused.
And one who would inherit it. Do-hyun's stomach dropped.
Min-jun.
He told me, Chairman, that the guardian's name was Min-jun, and that the heir's name was Naomi. Min-jun's voice did not waver. He made me swear an oath that night. He made me promise that when the day came, I would stand where he could not. I would protect what he had built, from any threat, including, if necessary, from his own son. Do-hyun could not breathe. The room felt very small suddenly.
Min-jun.
You would betray me? Min-jun finally looked Do-hyun directly in the eye. And for the first time in 20 years, there was no warmth in his gaze. I would not betray you, Chairman. I am keeping a promise I made to your father. There is a difference. He bowed once. Then he turned and walked out of the penthouse, and the doors closed behind him. That same night, exactly 72 hours after Attorney Park had dropped his bombshell in the boardroom, the most important gathering in the history of the Kong Syndicate took place in a discreet private hall on the outskirts of Seoul. 37 captains. The senior leadership of one of the most powerful business empires in East Asia. They sat in their assigned positions according to seniority. They wore black suits. And at the front of the hall, on a small raised platform, 2 chairs had been placed side by side. One for Do-hyun, one for Naomi. The captains had insisted on this. They wanted to hear both. They wanted to choose openly in the old way. Do-hyun did not know it yet, but he had already lost. He arrived first, flanked by 6 of his personal bodyguards. He took his seat. He scanned the room for friendly faces. He found fewer than he expected. Many of the captains would not meet his eyes. Then the doors opened again, and Naomi walked in. She was wearing a simple black suit, perfectly tailored, with no jewelry except a single jade pendant at her throat. She walked alone. She had no bodyguards. She took her seat beside Do-hyun. She did not look at him. The oldest captain in the room, the silver-bearded man with the scar, rose to his feet. Brothers, we are here tonight to settle a question that has divided this family. The question is simple. Who leads us now? The chairman by name, or the chairwoman by deed? A murmur ran through the room. The old captain raised a hand for silence. Chairman Do-hyun, you may speak first.
Do-hyun sotod.
He cleared his throat. He launched into a speech he had been preparing for 2 days. He spoke of loyalty. He spoke of bloodlines. He spoke of his father's legacy. He spoke of the foreign woman who had stolen what was rightfully his. He spoke for nearly 20 minutes. When he finished, there was polite silence. A few of the younger captains, the ones who owed their positions to him directly, nodded approvingly. Most of the others sat motionless. The old captain turned to Naomi. Madam Naomi, you may speak. Naomi rose to her feet. She walked to the center of the platform. She looked out at the 37 faces. She did not speak for a long moment. And then she did. I will not give you a speech, Naomi said. I will not promise you anything I have not already given you. For 12 years I have been among you. Some of you knew. Most of you did not. I do not blame you for not knowing. I made sure you would not know. She paused. Captain Bay, your daughter was diagnosed with leukemia 6 years ago. The hospital in Seoul could not treat her. She was flown to Houston. The bills were paid in full by an anonymous donor. I am that donor. She is alive today. She is studying at Yonsei University. I am told she wants to become a doctor. A captain in the third row, a heavy man with graying hair, dropped his face into his hands and began to weep silently. Naomi continued, her voice never rising, never falling. Captain Han. When your brother was killed in the Incheon operation 8 years ago, his widow had no income and 3 children. A foundation contacted her offering a monthly stipend, school fees, and a small apartment. The foundation does not exist on paper. The funds came from my personal accounts. Your nephew graduated last spring with honors. Another captain bowed his head. Captain Yoon, after your stroke 3 years ago, the rehabilitation facility in Switzerland that admitted you, the one no Korean insurance would cover. I paid for it. I never told you. I never expected to. I am telling you now only because the question of leadership has been raised, and you deserve to know the answer. She went on. Name after name, story after story, quiet acts of care, performed without recognition, repeated over a decade. By the time she had spoken 11 names, half the captains in the room were weeping openly. The old captain with the silver beard wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Do-hyun sat frozen in his chair. Watching the empire he had assumed was his slip away through invisible fingers. Naomi finished. I do not ask for your loyalty. I have not earned it through speeches. I have either earned it through 12 years of work, or I have not earned it at all. The choice is yours. Vote however your conscience demands. She bowed once. She sat down. The old captain rose. His voice was thick. The question is called. Who stands with Chairman Do-hyun? 6 captains rose to their feet. 6 out of 37. The old captain nodded once. Who stands with Chairwoman Naomi? 31 captains rose. The room was so silent you could hear the rustle of their suits. Captain Minjun, who had not moved during Naomi's speech, now stepped forward. He walked to the platform. He knelt before Naomi on one knee. He bowed his head until his forehead nearly touched the floor. Chairwoman, he said, his voice loud enough for every man in the room to hear. I pledge my life to your service, as I pledged it to your father before you, as I will pledge it until the day I die. One by one, the other 30 captains followed. They came forward. They knelt. They pledged. Naomi accepted each pledge with a small bow of her head. She did not gloat. She did not even smile. Do-hyun sat in his chair and watched his empire end. When the last captain had risen and returned to his seat, the old captain turned to Do-hyun. Chairman, the family has decided. You may leave with dignity, or you may leave with shame. The choice is yours. Do-hyun rose slowly. His legs felt unsteady. His mouth was dry. He walked toward the doors of the hall on legs that did not feel like his own. He did not look back. The doors closed behind him. And just like that, after 100 years, the Kang dynasty had a new ruler. Do-hyun returned to his penthouse that night to find it strangely silent. The lights were off. Soo-jin was not in the living room. He called her name. No answer. He walked into the bedroom. Her clothes were gone. Her jewelry boxes were gone. Her perfume bottles were gone from the vanity. Only one thing remained on the bed. A single white envelope with his name written on it in elegant handwriting. He picked it up with shaking hands. He tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. My love, by the time you read this, I will be on a plane. There are some things in life that are not what they seem. I am one of them. Goodbye, Soo-jin. Do-hyun sank to his knees on the marble floor. He sat there for a long time, the letter crumpled in his fist. The silence of the penthouse pressed down on him like water. He thought about the past 6 months. The way Soo-jin had appeared in his life so suddenly. The way she had laughed at all his jokes. The way she had always seemed to know exactly what to say. The way she had pushed him, gently but persistently, to divorce Naomi. The way she had asked him questions about the business, about the accounts, about the captains. He had thought she was being supportive. He had thought she was a woman in love. He had been wrong. He had been so completely, catastrophically wrong about everything. He pressed his forehead against the cold marble and, for the first time since he was a child, Kang Do-hyun wept. While Do-hyun wept on his marble floor, Han Soo-jin was sitting in a private lounge at Incheon International Airport, sipping a glass of champagne. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Safe travels. Your contract is fulfilled. Your payment has been deposited. Thank you, Soo-jin. Soo-jin smiled and typed her reply. It was an honor, madam. May I ask one question before I disappear? Of course. Why me? I was nothing when you found me. A struggling model. Why did you trust me with this? There was a long pause. Then Naomi's reply came. Because your father was once kind to mine. He paid for my father's surgery when no one else would. I never forgot. Goodbye, Soo-jin. Have a beautiful life. Soo-jin stared at the message for a long time. Then she finished her champagne and boarded her flight. The next morning, the news of the captain's decision swept through Seoul like a tsunami. The financial markets opened with a roar. Kong Group stocks, which had been wobbling for days, suddenly surged on the announcement of new leadership. Foreign investors who had been pulling out their money now rushed to put it back in. The Korean financial press was forced to publish embarrassing corrections to the cruel articles they had written just 1 week earlier. Television hosts who had mocked Naomi were now begging for interviews. The same internet forums that had been full of cruel jokes were now full of admiring posts about the chairwoman who outwitted the dragon. Naomi watched all of it from her office with the same calm she had watched her own humiliation from. None of it touched her. Drop a like for me right now if you are loving Naomi's quiet revenge. Tell me in the comments which moment hit hardest so far. Was it the divorce papers? The boardroom reveal? 3 days after the captain's meeting, Attorney Park arrived at Naomi's estate carrying a small wooden box. He looked nervous, but it was a different kind of nervous than before. This was the nervousness of a man who had been holding a secret for a very long time and was finally about to share it. Mr. Huang led him to the library where Naomi was waiting. She rose to greet him. Park, you look like a man with news. Madam. Attorney Park bowed deeply. I have come to deliver the last of Chairman Kong Sr.'s instructions to you. He left this with me 12 years ago. He told me to give it to you only when the transition was complete. The transition is complete. He placed the wooden box on the table between them. Naomi looked at the box. She did not open it immediately. What is inside? A recording, madam. From your father-in-law. He recorded it the year before he died. He wanted you to see it on this day, not before. He was very specific. Naomi nodded slowly. And you have kept it for 12 years without watching it? Attorney Park smiled faintly. I have never been tempted, madam. Chairman Kong trusted me with many things. I do not break his trust, even after his death. Naomi felt her throat tighten. Thank you, Park, for everything. Attorney Park bowed again. Madam, watching you over these 12 years has been the great honor of my career. He turned to leave. At the door, he paused. Do-hyun should see it too. Naomi was quiet for a moment. He will. That evening, Naomi sent Captain Min-jun to bring Do-hyun to her estate. Min-jun arrived at the penthouse to find Do-hyun unshaven, in the same shirt he had worn for 3 days, surrounded by empty bottles. Min-jun did not lecture him. He simply said, Chairman, there is something you must see. The chairwoman requests your presence. Do-hyun looked up at the captain who had once been his most loyal man. Why should I go? Min-jun was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Because your father is asking. Do-hyun stared at him. He did not understand. But something in Minjun's voice made him stand up. He showered. He shaved. He put on a clean suit. He followed Minjun out to the car. They drove through the Seoul night in complete silence. When they arrived at the Gangnam estate, Do-hyun looked at the mansion in genuine shock. She owns this. For 7 years, Chairman. Mr. Huang opened the door and bowed politely, with no trace of judgment. He led Do-hyun through hallways lined with art the man had never seen before, art his own father had once collected. He led him into a private screening room where Naomi was waiting. She rose when he entered. She did not embrace him. She did not extend her hand. But there was no triumph in her face either. Only a strange, quiet sadness. Sit down, Do-hyun. Please. He sat. He did not know what else to do. She nodded to a technician at the back of the room. The lights dimmed. A large screen lit up. And then, suddenly, Chairman Kang Sr. was looking out at his son. The old man on the screen was sitting in a leather chair in a study Do-hyun recognized from his childhood. He looked older than Do-hyun remembered. Thinner. But his eyes were still sharp. He cleared his throat. He began to speak. Do-hyun, if you are watching this, then I have failed. I have failed as a father and you have failed as a son. I am sorry that I am not there to tell you these things in person. I am sorry that this is how you must learn them. Do-hyun's chest tightened. He could not breathe properly. I never wanted this for you, my son. But I saw very early that you were not built for what I had built. You were built to be a king who demands. The empire requires a king who builds. The old man on the screen paused. He took a sip of water. He continued, 12 years ago I went to Lagos. I had been searching for 3 years. Searching for someone who could carry our family into the next century. I had auditioned dozens of candidates. I had been disappointed by every single one. And then I saw a young woman in a small office defending her father's company against vultures. She was 20, she was alone. She was terrified, but she did not show it. She fought them with patience. She destroyed them with strategy. She did not raise her voice once. I watched her and I knew. I had found her. I had found my successor. The screen flickered. The old man took another sip. I knew you would not accept her as a partner. You were already too proud even then. So I designed a marriage. Cover. A long, slow education. I gave Naomi access to everything. I taught her our business from the inside. I introduced her to our captains as your wife and watched her win them over one at a time. I transferred ownership to her gradually, year by year, signature by signature. I told no one but Attorney Park. Not even your mother knew. It was the loneliest decision of my life. Do-hyun's hands were trembling. He could not look away from the screen. My son, I want you to know something. I never feared losing the empire. The empire is a thing. Things can be replaced. Wealth can be rebuilt. Buildings can be sold. None of it matters. The old man leaned forward. His Do-hyun did not move on quite so easily. He spent the first month drinking. The second month sleeping. The third month he simply sat in his penthouse and stared at the wall. His phone stopped ringing entirely. Even his old friends, the men who had once filled his parties with laughter, no longer called. He understood. He did not blame them. Then one morning a knock came at his door. He opened it expecting a delivery. Instead he found Captain Minjun. Chairman.
Minjun bowed once.
I am not the chairman anymore, Minjun. You are the son of Chairman Kang. That title cannot be taken from you. Minjun stepped inside without being invited. I have come because the chairwoman has a message for you.
Do-hyun's stiffened.
What does she want? She does not want anything from you, Chairman. She is offering you something. Minjun reached into his jacket and produced a thick envelope. He placed it on the table. Inside is the deed to a small business. A coffee importing company. It is profitable. It is honest. It is not part of the Kang Empire. It is something separate. Something that was once your mother's before she died. The chairwoman has been holding it in trust for you. She believes the time has come to return it. Do-hyun stared at the envelope. Why? Minjun did not smile. Because the chairwoman believes everyone deserves the chance to start again. Even those who have not earned it. Even those who have hurt her. That is the kind of woman she is. That is the kind of woman your father saw. Do-hyun did not touch the envelope for a long time after Min-jun left. He looked at it. He walked past it. He poured himself a drink. He set the drink down without drinking it. Finally, late at night, he sat down at the table. He opened the envelope. He read the documents inside. It was true. A small coffee importing business in Busan. Profitable. Quiet. Modest. Nothing like the empire he had lost. But it was something. It was something he could build with his own hands, the way his father had once built with his. He thought about his father's words. Power is given only to those who first give themselves to others. He bowed his head over the papers. And for the first time he understood. 6 months passed. The international press began to take notice of the Kong chairwoman in earnest. She was profiled by Forbes. She was interviewed by the BBC. She was photographed at the World Economic Forum in Davos, standing between two presidents. Each time, the photographs showed the same woman. Calm, elegant, unshakable. She gave very few interviews. When she did, she spoke briefly and only about the work. Never about her past. Never about her marriage. Never about her ex-husband. The mystery only made her more powerful. Stories began to circulate about the Nigerian-born chairwoman who had taken over one of Asia's most feared business empires without raising her voice. Some called her ruthless. Some called her brilliant. Everyone called her by her name. Then came the day that changed everything once again. It was a Tuesday. Naomi was in her office reviewing acquisition documents when Mr. Huang appeared at her door, looking unusually concerned. "Madam, there is a gathering in the courtyard." Naomi looked up. "A gathering? It is difficult to describe, madam. You should come and see." She set down her papers. She followed him to the large windows at the front of the building. She looked down at the courtyard. Her hand went slowly to her throat. The courtyard was full of cars. Not just cars. Black armored cars. Bulletproof sedans. Diplomatic vehicles with flags of nations she recognized and some she did not. Men in dark suits stood in formation. Some of them were armed. Some of them carried briefcases. All of them were waiting. "How many?" Naomi asked softly. 16 delegations, madam. 17 if you count the Swiss. Naomi closed her eyes. She knew what this was. She had known this day would come. She had simply not known when. "Send them up, Huang. One at a time. Begin with the eldest." Mr. Huang bowed. He left. Naomi turned back to her desk. She straightened her papers. She poured herself a glass of water. She waited. The first man to enter her office was an old Italian gentleman with snow-white hair and a kind face. He bowed deeply when he saw her in the old way, the way men of his generation rarely bowed for anyone anymore. "Madame Okafor-kong." His voice was warm. "It has been many years." "Don Carlo," Naomi said, rising and bowing in return. "It has indeed. Your father-in-law spoke of you often before he died. He told me you would surprise the world one day. I see that day has arrived. I would not call it a surprise, Don Carlo. I would call it a long planting that has finally come to bloom." The old man laughed warmly. "Beautiful, as always. May I sit?" "Please." He sat. He folded his hands. He looked at her with the eyes of a man who had seen 70 years of secret history. "Madam, I have come, with my colleagues, to formally acknowledge what has long been true but never said. The continental partnership your father-in-law and I established many decades ago is now yours. We come to pledge our continued cooperation. To you, personally." One by one throughout the day they came. The old Italian. A Russian gentleman with hard eyes and gentle hands. A Brazilian woman who controlled half the shipping in the southern hemisphere. A Japanese man who bowed lower to Naomi than he had bowed to any woman in his life. A Saudi prince. A British lord. A French banker. A South African mining magnate. An Indian textile dynasty patriarch. They came alone or in small groups. They sat across from her. They bowed. They pledged. Naomi accepted each of them with the same quiet grace she had shown the captains. By the end of the day, the entire global network that Chairman Kong Sr. had spent his life building had publicly recognized his daughter-in-law as its new center. Do-hyun heard about it that evening on the news. He sat in his small apartment in Busan, where he had moved to run the coffee company. He watched the broadcast in silence. The cameras showed the long line of luxury vehicles. The commentators speculated about who had attended and what had been said. They debated, in stunned tones, what it all meant. They concluded, finally, that the woman who had once been called the most powerful woman in Asia was now, perhaps, the most powerful woman in the world. Do-hyun listened to all of it. He did not feel anger. He did not feel jealousy. He felt only a deep, quiet astonishment. He picked up his phone. He typed a single message. Congratulations. He hesitated. He added 2 more words. I understand. He pressed send. Naomi was in her office when the message arrived. She looked at the screen for a long moment. She did not reply immediately. She set the phone down. She returned to her work. 2 hours later, when she was leaving the office for the night, she picked up the phone again. She typed her reply. Thank you, Do-hyun. I am told the coffee company is doing well. Your father would be proud. She paused. She added 1 more line. He was always proud. She pressed send. She slipped the phone into her purse. She walked out of the building. Mr. Huang held the car door open for her. She slid inside. As the Mercedes pulled away from the curb, she looked up at the lights of the city, the Seoul skyline, more than half of which she now owned. She did not smile, but she breathed deeply, for the first time in a long time. The days that followed weighed on Do-hyun like stones tied to his chest. He would wake before sunrise in his small Busan apartment, walk to the harbor, and sit on the cold concrete watching the fishing boats pull in. He did not feel sorry for himself. He felt something worse than that. He felt the slow, terrible clarity of a man who had finally understood, far too late, exactly what he had thrown away. He thought about Naomi every hour of every day. Not the chairwoman the world now spoke of in hushed tones. The woman, the wife, the one who had eaten breakfast alone for 10 years because he refused to sit with her. The one who had worn her wedding ring even when he had stopped wearing his. The one who had loved him for 3 years while he looked through her like she was not there. He remembered things he had not allowed himself to remember in a decade. The way she used to hum quietly in the kitchen when she thought no one was listening. The way she had once tried to teach him a few words of Igbo, her mother's language, and he had laughed at her and walked away. The way she had decorated their first home with patient care, choosing every piece of art and furniture, while he criticized her taste at every turn. The way she had sat alone at hospital after hospital trying to understand why she could not give him a child, while he never once asked her how she was feeling. He remembered all of it now. Every cruelty, every dismissal, every time he had introduced her to someone as my wife, the way another man might introduce a piece of furniture. One night, after 3 weeks of this slow torment, Do-hyun could not bear it any longer. He drove from Busan to Seoul in the middle of the night. The highway was empty. The rain came down in sheets. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He did not know what he was going to say when he arrived. He only knew that he had to say it. He had to try. He had to look her in the eye one last time and tell her the truth. He arrived at the Gangnam estate at 4 in the morning. He stood at the gate, soaked to the bone, and pressed the intercom. Mr. Huang's voice came through, calm and unsurprised, as if he had been expecting this exact visit. Mr. Kong, the chairwoman is asleep. Please, Huang, I am begging you. I will wait in the rain until she wakes up. I will wait for a week. Please tell her I am here. There was a long pause. Then Mr. Huang said quietly, wait there. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Do-hyun did not move from the gate. The rain soaked through his suit. His hair clung to his forehead. He did not feel the cold. Finally, the gate buzzed open. He walked up the long driveway alone, his shoes filling with water. Mr. Huang met him at the door with a towel. She will see you in the morning room. 5 minutes. No more. Do-hyun nodded. He could barely speak. He followed Mr. Huang down the hallway with his heart pounding against his ribs. Naomi was waiting for him in a long silk robe the color of dark wine. Her hair was loose down her back. She looked, in that moment, like the woman he had married 12 years ago. She did not sit. She stood by the window with her arms crossed, watching the rain run down the glass. She did not turn when he entered. 5 minutes. Do-hyun. Speak. He stepped into the room. He stopped a respectful distance from her. His hands were shaking. Naomi. His voice broke on her name. He cleared his throat and tried again. Naomi. I came here tonight because I cannot live this way anymore. I cannot wake up one more morning knowing what I did to you, knowing what I lost, knowing that the greatest gift any man has ever been given was sitting across from me at breakfast for 10 years, and I never even looked up to see her face. She did not turn. She did not respond. He took a step closer. I am not asking you to forgive me. I do not deserve forgiveness. I am not asking you to give me back the empire. The empire was never mine. My father knew it. You knew it. Everyone knew it but me. His voice cracked again. I am asking you to give me a chance. Just a chance. To love you the way I should have loved you from the beginning. To wake up beside you. To eat breakfast with you. To learn the words of your mother's language. To sit with you in silence on a Sunday afternoon and ask nothing of you except the honor of being near you. Please, Naomi. Please. I am begging you. He sank to his knees on the wooden floor. For a long moment, Naomi did not move. The rain continued to fall outside. Then slowly she turned. She looked down at him kneeling on her floor. And in that moment, something rose up inside her that she had not allowed to surface in 12 years. Not anger. Anger had been burned out of her long ago. Something deeper. Something older. The memory of every dinner where he had laughed with another woman in front of her. The memory of the first time she had heard him on the phone with a mistress. His voice soft and tender. A softness he had never once used with her. The memory of standing at her father-in-law's funeral while Do-hyun ignored her for 3 full hours and then asked her, in the car ride home, to please stop embarrassing him with her grief. The memory of the boardroom presentations where her ideas had been dismissed and then, 6 months later, presented by Do-hyun himself as his own. The memory of the dinner parties where she had been seated at the far end of the table while his mistresses sat near him. The memory of the wedding anniversaries he had forgotten. The birthdays he had not attended. The hospital visits she had taken alone. The nights she had cried into her pillow so quietly that even Mr. Huang, sleeping down the hall, could not hear her. The gala. The papers in her face. You're nothing without me. You were nothing before me. You'll be nothing after me. The laughter. The cameras. The walk to the car alone. Naomi looked down at the man kneeling on her floor and she felt, finally, nothing. Not love. Not hatred. Not even pity. Only a deep, calm clarity. Stand up, Do-hyun. Her voice was soft. I will not have you on your knees in my house. He rose slowly. His face was wet with rain and tears and he could not tell the difference between the two. Do-hyun, I am going to say this only once. So listen carefully. He nodded, unable to speak. There was a time when I would have given anything to hear the words you just spoke. There was a time when I would have collapsed into your arms and forgiven you for everything. That time was many years ago. That woman is gone. She walked toward him slowly. She stopped just in front of him. She looked up into his face. You did not lose a wife on the night of the gala. You lost her long before that. You lost her on the first night of our marriage when you told me I was business. You lost her the first time you brought another woman into a restaurant where we had eaten together. You lost her every single day for 10 years, in 1,000 small ways, while she sat across from you hoping you would notice that she was dying. By the time you threw those papers at my face, there was nothing left of the woman you might have loved. You had already killed her. The gala was just the funeral. Do-hyun could not breathe. He reached out instinctively, as if to touch her face, and she stepped back. Not in anger, just in finality. I do not hate you, Do-hyun. I want you to understand that. I do not wish you ill. I am genuinely glad about the coffee shop. I am glad you are becoming the man your father hoped you would become. But I am not the woman who is going to walk that journey with you. Cannot be. There is too much between us. Too many years of being unseen. A woman can only be invisible for so long before she becomes someone who does not need to be seen by the man who could not see her. She turned back to the window. Mr. Huang will see you out. Do not come back, Do-hyun. Not like this. Not ever. Do-hyun stood in the center of the room for a long time, unable to move. He had imagined many endings to this conversation. He had imagined her slapping him. He had imagined her screaming. He had imagined her, in some small corner of his foolish heart, falling into his arms. He had not imagined this quiet, final closing of a door that had been closing for 12 years without him noticing. He bowed once, deeply, the way Minjun had once bowed to her at the syndicate hall. He turned. He walked to the door. He paused at the threshold. He did not look back. Naomi. His voice was barely a whisper. Thank you for loving me once. I did not deserve it. I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it. Then he walked out of the morning room, and out of her house, and out of her life, for the last time. Naomi stood at the window long after he had gone. The rain slowed. The first gray light of dawn began to color the sky above the city. Mr. Huang appeared quietly behind her with a cup of warm tea. He set it on the small table beside her without speaking. She picked it up. She held it in both hands. She took a slow sip. She closed her eyes. And for the first time since the night of the gala, 2 tears slid down her cheeks. Not for him. For her. For the young woman in Lagos who had once believed in marriage. For the bride who had stepped off a plane in Seoul 12 years ago with hope still in her heart. For every version of herself she had buried along the way to become the woman she was now. She wiped the tears away with the back of her hand. She finished her tea. She went upstairs to get ready for work. Now besties, pause this video for a moment and tell me honestly in the comments. What would you do if you were Naomi? Would you have forgiven him after seeing him on his knees in the rain, broken and finally understanding what he had lost? Or would you have done exactly what Naomi did? Opened the door, said your truth, and closed that chapter forever? There is no wrong answer. I want to hear from every one of you. Drop your honest thoughts below, and if you have not yet, please subscribe to Afrohan Tales and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. Now back to Naomi. A year passed. The Kong Group entered what financial historians would later call its most successful era. Naomi was named one of the 10 most influential people in the world by every major publication that tracks such things. She was offered seats on the boards of the United Nations. She refused most of them. She accepted a position on a humanitarian foundation that funded medical care for children in Africa and Asia. She visited Lagos for the first time in 12 years. She walked through the streets of her childhood. She visited her father's grave. She knelt beside it and spoke to him softly in the language they had once shared. She told him everything. She cried, finally, for the first time in years. The wind moved through the trees above her. It sounded almost like a reply. Do-hyun built his coffee company slowly, modestly. He worked with farmers in Ethiopia and Colombia. He learned the trade from the ground up. He hired only 10 employees. He paid them well. He made coffee. He sold coffee. He lived in a small apartment above his shop. He stopped drinking. He stopped chasing women. He read books his father had once recommended to him, books he had refused to read at the time. He took long walks along the Busan harbor at sunset. He thought about his marriage. He thought about his father. He thought about the woman he had thrown away. He did not try to win her back again. He understood now that he never could. But he tried, in his quiet way, to become someone she might one day be proud to have known. 2 years after the divorce, on a cold December evening, Naomi was invited to give the keynote address at the Asian Business Leaders Summit in Seoul. The hall was packed. 3,000 of the most powerful executives in Asia. She walked onto the stage in a simple navy dress. She approached the podium. She looked out at the audience. She began to speak. 2 years ago, on this very date, I stood on a different stage in this same city. A man told 300 people that I was nothing without him. He told me I had been nothing before him. He told me I would be nothing after him. He threw divorce papers at my face in front of every important person in this country. The audience was completely silent. I want to thank that man tonight. I want to thank him publicly, in front of all of you, because everything I have built since that night, I have built because of what he said. She paused. Power is not what we are told it is. Power is not loud. Power is not cruel. Power is not the ability to humiliate another human being in a public hall. Power is patience. Power is preparation. Power is the willingness to sit silently for 12 years while people laugh at you, because you know what they do not know. Power is choosing not to strike when you could destroy. Power is building something so well that when it finally stands, no one can knock it down, including the man who once threw paper at your face. The audience erupted in applause that lasted for 4 full minutes. Naomi waited patiently for it to subside. She continued, to the young women in this room, in this country, on this continent, to the women who have been told they are decoration, to the women who have been told they are not enough, to the women who have been told they are nothing without a man. I want you to hear me. You are the empire, not the man beside you, not the family that named you, not the title that defines you. You are the empire, and the only person who can confirm what you are is you. The applause shook the building. In a small apartment in Busan, Kang Do-hyun watched the speech on his television, and he wept. The next morning, Naomi sat at her desk reviewing the day's calendar when Mr. Huang brought her a small package. A delivery, madam. From Busan. Naomi raised an eyebrow. She accepted the package. Inside was a small jar of coffee beans, dark roasted, carefully labeled. Underneath the jar was a folded note. Madam Chairwoman, I heard your speech. I have nothing to offer you that you do not already have except this. The first beans from my Ethiopian harvest. I hope you will accept them, not as an apology. Apologies are not enough, but as an acknowledgement. You were never nothing. You were always everything. I am sorry it took me so long to see it. Kung Duyung. Naomi read the note 3 times. She set it down carefully. She held the jar of coffee in her hands for a long moment. That afternoon, in a board meeting attended by 20 of the highest-ranking executives in her empire, someone asked her a question. The chief media officer, presenting a profile request from a major American magazine, mentioned that the journalist wanted to know whether the chairwoman had any regrets about the way her marriage ended. The executive looked at her cautiously, expecting her to refuse the question. Naomi considered for a moment. Then she said, tell the journalist this. Some people lose their greatest treasure because they mistake it for something ordinary. I was not the one who lost a treasure that night. I was the one who learned how much I was worth. The room was silent. She turned the page of her notebook. Next item on the agenda. 3 months later, on a bright spring morning, Naomi traveled to Busan for a port inspection. Her motorcade passed through the city center. She looked out the window. She saw on a small side street a modest coffee shop with hand-painted signs in the window. She knew without being told whose shop it was. She tapped the partition. Pull over. The driver hesitated. Madam, pull over. I want a coffee. She stepped out alone. She walked into the shop. A bell rang above the door. Behind the counter stood Do-hyun, wearing a simple apron, his hands stained with coffee. He looked up. He froze. The two of them stared at each other across the small, sunlit room. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Do-hyun bowed, deeply, the way he had never bowed to her in 10 years of marriage. He straightened up. His voice was steady but soft. Madam Chairwoman, what can I get you? Naomi looked at him. She did not smile, but the hardness in her eyes had softened, just slightly. An Ethiopian roast. Black.
No sugar.
He nodded. He worked the espresso machine with careful hands. He poured the coffee into a simple ceramic cup. He set it on the counter between them. She picked it up. She took a sip. It was the best coffee she had ever tasted. She looked at him over the rim of the cup. You have done well, Do-hyun. His eyes filled with tears. He did not let them fall. Thank you, Naomi. She set down the empty cup. She placed a folded bill on the counter. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. She looked back at him one final time. Your father would be proud. Do-hyun could not speak. He nodded. She walked out. The bell rang above the door. The Mercedes pulled away from the curb. Do-hyun stood behind his counter, alone, the empty cup still in front of him, the smell of coffee still in the air. He did not cry. He had cried enough in 2 years. Instead, he picked up the cup. He washed it carefully. He set it on the shelf with the others. Then he walked to the window and watched the motorcade disappear into the city until it was gone. Naomi returned to Seoul that night. She did not speak of the visit to anyone. She returned to her work. She built. She negotiated. She acquired. She mentored. She funded scholarships for African girls. She founded a leadership academy in Lagos. She built hospitals. She funded research. She did, in the end, exactly what Chairman Kang Sr. had hoped she would do. She used the empire to build something larger than the empire. Years passed. Decades, eventually. The story of the Korean mafia boss who divorced his black wife and lost everything became one of the most famous business case studies of the 21st century. It was taught in universities. It was made into a documentary. It was whispered about in boardrooms from Tokyo to Sao Paulo. But what was rarely told in the case studies and documentaries was the smaller story underneath. The story of a young woman in Lagos who once defended her father's company with patience instead of rage. The story of an old Korean man who saw her and recognized her and entrusted her with his life's work. The story of a marriage that was a cover, then a heartbreak, then a forgiveness. The story of a coffee shop in Busan where a humbled man finally learned what his father had been trying to teach him all along. The story of a divorce that ended an empire and began another. The story of a woman who was told she was nothing, who smiled, who signed her name, who walked out, and who never once, in all the years that followed, looked back. If this story moved you, please give it a like right now. Drop a comment below telling me your favorite scene. Was it when the divorce papers hit Naomi's face and she didn't flinch? When the captains knelt one by one? When the international leaders bowed to her? Or when Do-hyun finally bowed to her in the coffee shop? Subscribe to Afrohan Tales so you never miss another powerful story like this one. Share this video with every woman in your life who has ever been told she was not enough. Tell her she is the empire. And I will see you in the next story, besties. Take care of yourselves. You are the empire.